All right, thank you so much, Amber. Good morning and welcome to the August 14th, 2025 Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 9:02 a.m. Amber, would you please take attendance?
Yes, thank you. Ava Bermuda Zimmerman,
Present.
Isha Canada. Isha Canada. We see Isha's here. Adrian Cochran will not be joining us today. Andrea Comer.
Here.
Sheila Hummel.
Present.
Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
Eleanor Michael.
Present.
David Salazar Austin.
Present.
Molly Weston Williamson.
Present.
Holly Williams will not be joining us today. Janae Woods Weber.
Present.
Justin Zartman.
Present.
Melissa Gibran.
Present.
You forgot.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And and Fran Pastore.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Did you call Mike Soltis?
Let's see here.
I didn't hear my name.
I didn't hear
Mike,
either.
I forgot about you. I'm so sorry. Mike Soltis, I just skipped right over you.
No problem. I'm present.
Thank you. Now we have a quorum.
Yes, Amber, Isha is here. Apologies for that as well.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Amber. And I'd like to thank the members of the public for joining us this morning. And next, I would like to ask for a review of the July 10th, 2025 meeting minutes. And are there any corrections or discussion of the minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved. A second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? And any abstentions? I will abstain as I was not present at the last meeting.
I'm also abstaining.
I also need to abstain. Thank you.
Myself and myself as well.
Okay, so Justin, Eleanor, Molly, and Melissa.
Yes.
As well.
Andrea and Fran.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Harinder, would you please provide the annual actuarial analysis conducted by Spring Group?
Thank you. Share my screen now. So the purpose of today's presentation is to share the annual actuarial analysis results. The analysis is split into two primary sections. We've got the full year fiscal year 2025 results, as well as the projection for the next 3 years. So I'll talk a bit about both of those items, and then open it up for questions at the end. Okay. I'll start off with the fiscal year 2025, fiscal year ending June 2025 results. The numbers shown are on an incurred basis, as I always mention. So it's not on a paid basis, it's on an incurred basis and reflects reserves and so on that we would be holding as well. Overall, the actual results reported in our annual report were an overall ending fund balance of $641 million. That represents about $1.8 million less than what we had in our most recent prior projection, so about 0.2%. And overall, that's driven by starting fund balance at the beginning of the fiscal year of $628.7 million and net activity of $12.3 million, which increased the number, the fund balance to $641 million over the course of the year. Within that $12.3 million, the contributions earned were $482.4 million. Investment income was $27.6 million. Those were offset by paid claims of $457.5 million and other expenses of $40.2 million. Okay. So overall, the net activity of 12.3 million represents about 1.8 million less than what we had in our most recent projection. That's driven by higher incurred claims, offset by, in part by high investment income, as well as high contributions, if you can see here on the table. Overall, when it comes to the funding metrics, as shown in the table below, the fund balance continues to look strong relative to when you compare against those funding metrics. We are monitoring these closely as the fund balance continues. I guess the reserve and the losses, adverse losses, continue to increase relative to the fund balance. So we see that bottom metric as an example is 0.4 to 1, which is getting pretty close to the 0.5 to 1. So we'll continue to monitor that and look at that over the long term as well. But overall, as it stands today, all of these funding metrics, we continue to meet the targets that have been set. So the fund position remains strong. This page provides a graphical illustration of the same result that I showed in the prior page. So overall, if you look at the graph on the left, that provides actual. Graph on the right provides the prior projection. Graph on the left shows that the fund balance was 628.7. Overall revenue was 510 million. So that's contributions plus investment income. Expense was a little bit less than that, 497.7 million. So, and those are the claims and other expenses. And that's what resulted in 641 million net fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. Okay. This page provides additional detail, which we did not intend on reviewing in detail at this point, but I'll leave it for questions and for your review later. With that, I'm going to focus on projection for the next 3 years. So one thing I will highlight is that the projection is heavily dependent on the actuarial assumptions that have been used in this analysis. We have also looked at various sensitivities to these results. We're planning to present all of that at a later point. But as far as the baseline result, that's what we'll talk about today. Again, I'll make a note that these numbers are on an incurred basis. Okay. So the first column here shows the reported results, which are the same as what I just talked about for fiscal year 2025. And then we show 3 additional years for fiscal year 2026, 2027, and 2028. Okay. Overall, looking at the bottom line, the ending fund balance that starts at 641 million at the beginning of the fiscal year 2026 increases in the next fiscal year to 660 million with about plus 19 million projected net activity. And then it decreases it's projected to decrease in the next 2 years after that. So we have negative net activity in those following 2 years. A little bit more detail in terms of the 2026 numbers. There is a transfer from the operating reserve as of July 1st that was noted. I believe Dave will talk a bit more about that in this section, but overall that's 14 million. So that makes up a large chunk of the positive net activity. The additional items here noted, you see contributions at 505 million, investment income at 23 million, incurred claims 481 million, and other expenses at 43 million. So overall, what's happening is that the net activity is fairly close to zero relative to the fund balance. And we do see as incurred claims go up in the following 2 years, and contributions also increase, but not necessarily increasing at the same level. We end up in a position where the revenue is actually less than the claims and other expenses. So the revenue is less than the expenses, so we have negative net activity projected in this scenario. Okay. So I just want to point that out. That's what we're seeing in our baseline results. And we'll be providing several additional scenarios, as well as a longer term projection as well in upcoming meetings. Okay. Moving on to the, I'll skip over the detailed page again for similar reasons intended for your review later. But this page provides a graphical illustration of the same result that I was talking about in that prior page. Overall, again, you can see the fund balance, it goes up. It's expected to go up in the next fiscal year, in part driven by that one-time transfer of 14 million. And then as revenue becomes a little bit less than the total expense, as you can see with the orange line compared to the blue line, we see the fund balance dipping down over the next couple of years after that. Okay. So this is our baseline projection. Again, the numbers are very sensitive to the underlying assumptions. We reviewed the assumptions and gone through that in a fair amount of detail. And we have also provided those assumptions in the appendix of this document. But again, we are looking at the sensitivity of these results. So there is some range in terms of where the final result will land based on sensitivity to the various assumptions and how actual performance looks relative to the underlying assumptions. Okay. With that, I'll summarize what I've been talking about overall. So overall, net activity for the period was around $12 million. As a result, the fund balance is $641 million at the end of the fiscal year. That fund balance meets the funding metrics that they had set out. So that indicates that the fund balance is strong, at over 600 million today. But the fund balance is expected to decrease by about 3% over the next 3 years based on our current projection. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Morning. Narendra, thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question about the investment income. There was a projected drop between FY27 and 28. Can you talk a little bit about where that projection comes from, or
Yes.
how you came to that number?
Yes. And I'll actually, this will be helpful for me to reference the assumptions page, which is on page 15 of the document in the appendix. We do have an assumption of just over 4% for the upcoming fiscal year in terms of investment income. And then that number drops down to 2.88% in the following years. Okay. These assumptions were provided by the Office of Policy and Management, OPM, for the short-term investment fund. So we're referencing the assumptions that were provided by them. But what's driving that drop, or the high number, and then the drop is the underlying assumption around that, which is a 4% number for that first fiscal year, 2026, and then decreasing to 2.88%.
Thank you.
Other questions? Molly, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the last bullet on the last substantive slide, I just want to make sure we're understanding that correctly. It looks like not in the immediate term, but in the next couple of years, we're expecting to hit a point where we're spending more than we're taking in. And I just want to make sure we're wrapping, one, that I'm understanding that correctly, and two, that we're wrapping our heads around that correctly, because it's not a short-term problem. We have the reserves, like we can continue paying benefits there, but since we don't have the ability to take in more money than we're currently taking in, it sounds like potentially we're running into a future problem. So is that correct, that we're looking at in the next couple of years, we're expecting to spend more than we're bringing in? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, the numbers are very close in terms of revenue and expense, as you saw in this graphic here. So revenue and expense, they're very close. And really, there is some sensitivity around whether that one number will be higher than the other at the end of the day. But yes, that is correct. The revenue is growing at one level, but the claims are expected to go up at a higher level. We do expect greater incidence over the next couple of years until we get to where we think the program will be a bit more stable in terms of incidence in around 2028. So overall, we see claims going up. We have seen that in the past as well, you know. So based on that, the expectation is that the fund balance will decrease because you know, your claims have gone up, will continue to go up at greater
you.
pace. Yeah.
Molly, I want to thank you for highlighting that because that's something we have been saying is something we anticipate happening. And this is the first time we have a projection from spring with the 3-year look where it does look like that's going to be happening. As Harinder has said, we have been asking them to do some sensitivity analysis. The sensitivity analysis is really looking at what happens if we adjust the assumptions slightly in different ways, and what does that do to the fund balance. But I think this is really something the board is we are going to be asking the board to be looking at very closely about the different options that are available under the existing statute, whether statutory change is necessary. We don't want to be alarmist, but the reason we bring the actuaries in and ask for these projections, the 3-year projection, the 10-year projection, is so that we can make appropriate adjustments before we get to a situation where it's a true emergency. So we'll be talking a lot about these issues in the next few months.
Great, thank you so much. Molly, I see your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I think just to underscore that point, like the reality that we're facing is the authority does not have the power to raise any more money than we're currently raising. We're already maxed out on the statutorily authorized contribution rate. And so assuming that we continue to see these projections bear out and recognizing that there's inherent uncertainty in predicting the future, even when you're doing a really good job at doing it, like the realities that we're looking at that I think Aaron was decorously alluding to are, unless the legislature gives the authority the power to raise the contribution rate even slightly above the 0.5, the tools we have are we cut benefits. And that is a really scary potential reality, and I think behooves all of us to appreciate the staff and Spring Group calling our attention to these concerns, but also to continue raising the conversation about whether the legislature ought to give us the ability to continue paying the same level of benefits that we've been paying and that the legislature promised, by giving the authority the power to raise rates beyond our by far lowest in the country cap on rates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly. Any other comments or questions?
So
Okay.
I would just ask, you know, when do we start having those conversations with the legislature? When do we start, without being alarmist, when do we begin having the conversations? Knowing that we have the lowest rates, some of the lowest rates of all the states participating in this program or offering this program. How do we begin that, and when do we begin it?
So I think we have been having preliminary conversations with everybody, including all of you, because we've been saying for the last, feels like forever, but several months, you know, income claims are going up. Expenses are going to start exceeding income. So I think this projection, the sensitivity analysis that we'll be presenting to you next month, the analysis that we do every fall when we get the data from other states about what their caps are and what their benefit rates are, that is all information that we are compiling and start socializing all of our stakeholders. Not just the legislature, but of course, importantly, the legislature. So I think these are conversations to have. I do want to recognize in the broader economic context, the fact that we have a balance of over $600 million tends to make people say, why are you talking to us right now? You have a lot of money right now. So, and they have more immediate, truly urgent needs to fill because of people who have, or programs that don't have any money. So we are starting the conversation, but again, we're doing it in a way that's we have been having this beginning conversation of this is what's happening. This is what we look to expect to happen. These are the things that we can do in the future. The sooner we act, the more moderate the change, but we are also very aware that, you know, in a fund balance over 600 million, when you look at programs that have had funding cut completely, our priorities are not always the same as everybody else's. So it's an ongoing discussion. And I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can plan for it, and the more we discuss sort of why we think it's important to make changes on the earlier side in the next couple of years rather than waiting until we're in a dire situation. We don't want to get there. That's the conversation we'll be having.
Great, thanks, Erin. I see Melissa has her hand raised.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. And I appreciate, Erin, you touching on that, because certainly we see the trend based on the assumptions in the report that there's going to be this switch of expenditures versus revenue. But to discount that people have had their payroll deductions, and now we are sitting on over $600 million. Not to say that out loud and immediately go to increasing the payroll deduction is, I think, a little bit too quick. I think we need to understand, how long does this reserve last? We have new onboarding happening with our paraeducators and others in our school system. In our last finance meeting, I asked the actuarial folks to also take a look at what potentially adding state employees to our rosters looks like. I think right now, the conversations that are happening behind the scenes regarding CBAC is something that I am very concerned about, looking at what that analysis might look like. So before we immediately go to increasing payroll deductions or increasing the payroll tax that all of our residents who are not unionized are paying, I think we need to understand what the actual utilization is, and having that sensitivity analysis is interesting. I think I saw last time it was 50% we had of rejections of our applications. I think there's a lot. Didn't I see that, Erin? I saw 50% somewhere.
I really want to react to that, because no.
Okay, but
we approve over 80%.
80%.
Over 80%.
Okay, thank you.
Those are approvals at over 80%. And John is going to do a whole presentation on the claims in a few minutes.
Oh, perfect. So I just think that there's a lot of nuances to look at, and I would be very cautious before we immediately go to increasing folks' deductions out of their payroll before we get there. I just think we have a lot to dissect first. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that comment. Ava.
Harinda, I'm just curious to see if there's any conversation happening in Spring Group in regards to potential impact on the federal level that might have on states like ours, of how trends might possibly change our projections.
Yes, so we are looking at some of the economic factors that could impact the program in particular. So yes, so you'll see there's a number of assumptions behind all these numbers, things like how unemployment levels will change, what will happen on inflation, on the inflation side, even wage-wise, it's what likelihood of the wages going up and by how much, as well as some of the other assumptions like we talked about, the investment income level. So we are looking at that. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, so continuing to just look at it. And one of the things we're doing is looking at the sensitivity of if some of these things change, if there is some sort of extraneous event that might dramatically alter the fund or in some way or impact either how claims are made or how contributions received, like how the contributions are impacted, what that could look like. So yeah, we are thinking about that and looking at that.
Thank you. Even though we don't have clarity just now, it is helpful to hear that Spring is considering that and factoring it into the assumptions. Thank you.
Okay, Justin.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everyone this morning. I think these projections are helpful years out so that we can start to get ahead of it, and really drill down on, we have some changes with new people in the plan. And as Melissa said, I just want to echo that I think we should look at all options before automatically assuming that there would be an increase in the payroll tax on this. And I think part of that would also be looking at our own expenses for this, for us as the paid leave authority as well. I want to put that in the room as well, because I think that's something, well, it's not a lot of expenses. I think it would be good faith before just going and asking for an increase in the payroll tax.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Any other comments or questions for Harindra? Ava.
It's not a comment or question for Harinda. It's just a blanket comment to remind other board members that I don't know the exact meeting date that we had a presentation where the paid leave team shared with us the percents from other states, but we were definitely significantly lower than other states that have existing programs. And if we get closer to a conversation of what a tax could look like in the future and maybe the possible of 2026 session, I recommend that we revisit that conversation.
Thanks, Ava.
Great. Good point.
All right, any other comments? All right, thank you to Harindra and the Spring Group for that presentation, and thank you for the robust conversation on that front. Moving on, our next agenda item, Michael, would you please lead discussion on the proposed revisions to the consolidated policies that were posted for public comment in the Connecticut Law Journal in May 2025?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eleanor. And good morning, everybody. My apologies, my voice is a little bit off. I'm getting over a cold. I'm going to share my screen briefly. Can folks see the slide?
We can see your screen.
Thank you so much. So as Eleanor mentioned, this is something we have talked about a couple times in the past. There were two sets of revisions to the consolidated policies that we had discussed. This is about the first set that began back in May. The goal would be to officially adopt these policies as they have gone through the notice and comment period. There was one change we made as a result of that comment period that I put at the bottom here. We talked about it in a little more detail at last month's board meeting. The only reason why we didn't have the vote to adopt it is there weren't sufficient members present to reach the 2/3 majority we need in order to officially adopt policy. So happy to take any questions that anyone has if they weren't at that meeting, or if they have any questions, even if they were. But otherwise, I think we could potentially jump to a vote at this time.
Okay, any questions for Michael?
I do have a question. I'm sorry, I
Sure.
should have raised my hand. I apologize.
Go ahead.
I'm curious what the difference is, why the clarification is needed for rests and charter schools to negotiate. I'm just curious why that stands out at me.
Oh, yeah, great question. So previously, we had language previously in our policies related to RESCs and charter schools, basically officially saying that they were considered the same as all other local and regional boards of education, that they would also be subject to those rules. With the change in the law, the fact that they are now going to be covered under the public school operators, we just want to make it clear that those same rules apply to them. So in the same way that public school operators who have a union can negotiate to participate via that mechanism, that same rule applies to RESCs and charter schools. Does that answer the question?
It does, thank you. And so this is pertinent now because of that change in law allowing uncertified or non-certified employees to become part of the program. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, there will be more changes in the next batch. That's sort of set 2 of changes that we'll hopefully be able to adopt next month. We're currently in the notice and comment period for a lot of those changes, but it's related to that in a way. But this is for the folks who don't get pulled in under that law, who are still able to negotiate.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the proposed revisions to the consolidated policies?
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries.
You.
Thank you, Michael. All right, John, will you please provide the quarterly claims administration update at this time?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. And just let me know if you can see this properly.
We're seeing your desktop, John.
There we
There
go.
we go. We can see your
Okay,
screen.
great, thank you. Okay, so I have a brief overview of claims administration for July 2025 and a 2024 to 2025 year-over-year data comparison for you this morning. The 3-month claims filed trend is 27,467 claims received, with a monthly moving average of 9,156. This is a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 11.2% compared to the May through July 2024 period. July 2025 cases filed of 9,606 is the second highest monthly claims filed total, second only to the first month of claims intake in January 2022, when we had a large spike during the COVID epidemic. Year over year, claim volume for July 2025 is also 12.73% higher than July of 2024. Year over year claims filed shows program growth with an increase of 9,918 claims. This represents a 9.41% growth rate in claims filed year over year in 24-25 compared to 23-24. The data presented includes 12,101 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason for 23-24 and 11,703 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason from 2024 to 2025. And this slide illustrates 12-month claims by leave reason and percentage of claims filed by gender statistical trends. The categories represented in the bar chart are the 4 largest leave reasons, totaling 99.4% of claims filed. Other leave categories are in the chart on the right and total a little more than 0.5% of total claims filed. The bonding data presented includes 11,703 cases representing the bonding segment of pregnancy claims. This slide highlights the reporting impact of successful customer service improvements made in streamlining pregnancy and bonding cases into one case. Cases filed are shown in blue, and the associated bonding segment of pregnancy cases filed are shown in orange. The reporting of these incremental bonding cases more accurately demonstrate program growth and represent an 11.3% increase in cases filed in the 12-month period ended July 31st, 2025. Counting the bonding segment of pregnancy cases as separate cases provides a level playing field to compare year-over-year claim statistics and when comparing the Connecticut paid leave program to all other state paid leave programs that count these cases separately. Fiscal year-over-year adjudicated claims show a 1.48% approval rate increase from 24 to 25. When adding the bonding segment of pregnancy cases, approved claims rise to almost 83,000, and the approval rate rises an additional 2.43% to 80.7%. The denial rate drops to 19.3%. In the bottom table there, the 6-month February 25 to July 25 period totals 34,342 approvals with an approval rate of 78.57%. When including the bonding segment of pregnancy cases, approved claims increase to 39,926 and the approval rate increases to 81%. And the race and ethnicity data was collected on an opt-in basis beginning in August of 2023. The data reported are cumulative statistics from August 2023 through June of 2025. The opt-in response rate for race and ethnicity is 33 and 32% respectively. Approval and denial rates are relatively consistent with overall program rates, although there are a couple of categories that have lower approval rates. To the extent those differences are not skewed by low response rates, we think additional outreach efforts in 2025 by the community education coordinators may help to improve some approval percentages in those categories. And the weekly payments trendline graph shows significant weekly payment growth to an average of $8.92 million per week over the last 26 weeks. The trend is being driven by 3 components: a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 9.41%, an increase in the approval rate of 3.91%, and 2 increases in weekly benefit rates tied to minimum wage increases. These minimum wage increases compound to a 9.26% increase in weekly benefit rates. Some lower weekly payment data in December 24 and January 25 reflect seasonality in claims filed we've consistently seen over the last 3 years in leaves taken in November and December. The number of unique employees paid by Connecticut Paid Leave has risen to almost 170,000, and the total amount the program has paid to Connecticut workers is now over $1.27 billion. 2025 year-to-date total days paid increased by 8.92% compared to 2024. Year-over-year, year-to-date payments are also up 14.67% thus far in 2025. Average weekly payments over the last 26 weeks have risen to $8.92 million per week, and all payment metrics show significant growth from 23 to 24 and 24 to 25 as well. And call center metrics show the average number of monthly calls into the call center over the last 12 months was 29,892 per month. 89% of calls were answered in 30 seconds or less. While year-over-year claim volume was up over 9.68%, call volume for June 2025 was down by 2%, and overall the annual amount was relatively flat year-over-year, although we had that increase in claims of 9.8%. Claimant call types received by type of customer service skill were 64% for existing claim services, so that's the largest by far, 29% for new claims, and 7% for payment inquiries. And again, the other thing I would highlight is that on the new claims, that number has remained relatively flat at about 30 or 29% for new claim calls. And on the next slide, you will see that there's been an increase in web filing. From inception, we're probably in the low to mid 60% range for web-based claims filing. And at this point, it has now increased to about 75%. So this slide illustrates customers' electronic filing, portal usage, and electronic communication. Online claim filing has steadily increased to 75% of claims filed. Opt-in for email and text messaging is very high at 85% and 83% respectively. And portal messaging remains a highly used mode of communicating for claimants who prefer the ease of messaging their case manager. Connecticut Paid Leave's website claim section features a streamlined layout with easier to access to improved claims filing and benefit information. CTPL website enhancements combined with AFLAC portal enhancements are helping drive our efforts to inform and educate claimants and employers on claims filing and process requirements. These IT improvements have helped facilitate increased approval rates and lower denial rates. The authority's internal customer service personnel and AFLAC personnel are now driving customers to these enhanced resources, and we are seeing improved claims outcomes as a result. And that concludes the claims presentations. Any questions? Hi, Molly.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this. This is so helpful. So it looks like we're looking at a denial rate that's in the like 20%-ish range. Some of that depends on exactly how we're counting the pregnancy claims.
Correct.
Do we have a sense of sort of where that's coming from? Like why are claims being denied and how should we be understanding that denial rate?
So we're still seeing approximately high 70s for denials that are for missing or incomplete paperwork. And we've also recently undertaken some surveys and studies on that to try to get to the root of the why behind why some of that paperwork is not being returned. We've also done some form enhancements and things of that nature to try to make it easier for people to get these documents completed, the employers to get the documents completed, and medical providers make it easier for them to get these documents completed. But that remains the biggest issue. While those approval rates have been increasing incrementally over time, the lion's share of the denials, remaining at about that 20% threshold are now because of that paperwork missing or incomplete.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Isha.
Hi, yes. Good morning, John. So thank you for your update today. I have a question on a prior slide. I believe it was let me look here, the leave reason by gender.
Okay.
So I was just curious for the category of own injury / illness, is that reflective of, exempting other benefits, customers may have relative to workers' compensation or short-term disability type of benefits? So I was just curious about that.
So there are coordination of benefits that take place when an employer is a primary benefit, such as workers' comp. And by statute, workers' comp payments for income replacement would mean that that individual will be precluded from receiving benefits during any week in which they are receiving workers' comp income replacement benefits. And then with respect to short-term disability is often a secondary benefit in that they have clauses in those contracts that require that a state paid leave program pays first. So oftentimes in those cases, there's not much of an issue unless and until that short-term disability carrier becomes primary. And then of course, there's other coordination of benefits that occur with any employer provided PTO, vacation, sick time, and things of that nature as well. So we capture all that information on the employment verification form that we require the employer to provide to us so that we can accurately adjudicate these claims and pay for the appropriate time period without overlapping payments that way, unless, as I said, if the employer or the other benefit provider on behalf of the employer is paying on a secondary basis, then the only caveat there is that they can't exceed 100% of the employee's total gross wages.
Okay. Thank you.
Just going to the sort of underlying question, I think there is sort of a sort of noticeable difference between women versus men on own injury, which doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. You would think that men and women get sick at about the evenly, so would you expect them to get claims about evenly? We can do some analysis to see if women and men are getting sick evenly. I honestly don't know if that's a fair assumption. And my sense, but we'd have to validate, is that we're not seeing other states have markedly different results, but we can also validate that just to compare. We know that caregiver being so heavily weighted toward women is not surprising given cultural norms. That is something that we do see and have some, we're not expecting that. We were expecting that. Our bonding rates at 50-50 is actually very progressive. Other states are looking to us to say, how are you getting all the men to bond? And people are proud of us for that one. But we haven't really looked at it for own injury, which we can do.
No, thank you for that, Michael and Aaron. I guess just to underlie, the purpose of the question was just from the earlier conversation and thinking about the ways in which, as we talk, in the coming months about alternative assumptions around solvency for the program. So just thinking of areas of where we have our levers potentially. So I'm just trying to tease some of that out and trying to correlate some of the claiming data with some of those solvency projections. But I guess more to come as we open this discussion up a little bit more in the future.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll stop sharing then.
Thank you so much, John, for that very detailed presentation and a lot of really interesting information in there. And I particularly appreciated the information about how quickly calls were answered with the under 30 seconds. That's really impressive, and a great customer service that we're providing there.
It is. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the committee reports. Mike, could you please provide the policy and personnel report?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. The committee did not meet this month, so we have nothing to report. Our next meeting is on September 2nd.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Molly, would you please provide the outreach and engagement report?
Sure. We did meet last month and got really exciting updates on a bunch of great work that is happening, including we saw a preview of a really cool video and starting to see really great work coming through. And we do not meet in August, but we'll meet again in September.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks so much, Molly. And did I hear Holly is not here today? Is that right? Okay. So Dave, would you please provide the Finance and Audit Committee report then?
Sure. Thank you, Eleanor. So we did have a meeting this month, and one of the things we did was we received the annual actuarial analysis that Harindra just went over with us. So that was already previewed by the Finance Committee. We reviewed proposed revisions to two policies, the finance and accounting policy and the credit card policy. And so that will be reviewed next appropriately by the Policy and Personnel Committee, which Mike indicated will be meeting in September. And then we reviewed the June financial statements, which I will be going over now.
We can see your screen, Dave.
Thank you for the verification. Much appreciated. So results, as I mentioned, were for June 2025. That is the end of our fiscal year end. And so for the month of June, our results were a negative $1,376,000. That was $178,000 positive variance for the month. That actual dollar amount is higher than usual. We had a few things happen in June. Number one, we had our annual insurance premium payment. Number two, we had our quarterly grievance adjudication expense to DOL, i.e. our appeals expense. And we also had some outreach expenses, including our community engagement initiative that we had some back billing on that was current. So we paid that out, and that all contributed to the higher than usual run rate for monthly expenses. But like I said, having said that, we were still better than budget for the month. For the fiscal year, our net income less expenses was $1,754,000. That is a slight negative variance of $160,000. But remember, we didn't transfer $5 million of administrative fees to the authority because our expenses were running lower than expected. So we kept the money in the contribution fund where it can earn interest. And so the converse of that was that we had better than budgeted expenses of over $4.5 million for our operating budget for the fiscal year ended 2025. For bond money, we spent just over $31,000. That was on fund recovery expenditures, over $68,000 positive variance. For the fiscal year, we spent just under $940,000, and that resulted in a positive $260,000 variance for our spending for bond money, which leaves us at over $1,446,000 of bond money available for future use. Moving on to our contribution account, we had net activity for the month of June of negative $37,151,000. That is a negative variance of over $5.4 million. Biggest driver of that, as usual, was benefits being paid that were higher than we originally budgeted. Our benefits that were paid this month were $36 million. That's a weekly run rate of $9 million. As John had indicated before, our run rate is running north of $8.9 million, which it was last month. And so it increased in June, and it's actually still increasing in July, as I'll get to in a minute. Other results for June, we had just over $500,000 of contributions. They were over budget. Our investment income was at $2.1 million. That's slightly under what we had budgeted because even though the interest rate that we're earning now, which is currently at 4.4%, is higher than what we budgeted at 4.0%, the base we're earning it on was lower than what we budgeted, and that's because of the higher benefits that we're paying out. Having said that, we were still over budget for investment income for the year at just under $3.9 million. And so speaking of the fiscal year end, our net activity for the year was $19.8 million. That is just under $43.3 million less than what we budgeted. Again, that was because of higher benefits that were paid than we budgeted over a year ago. But the good news is that was offset by higher than budgeted numbers for contributions. That was a $10.5 million plus variance because our contributions for the year were $474.9 million. Actually, if you include the contributions from our fund recovery efforts, they totaled at just under $477.5 million. So that's a brief overview of how we did for the fiscal year end. What that means for the contribution fund is that at the end of June, we had a balance of just over $585.8 million. That is on a cash basis. You heard Harindra say before that our balance was $654 million on an incurred or accrual basis. So the cash basis is different. And if you're new to the board and not familiar with why it's lower on a cash basis than an accrual basis, that's because the biggest timing difference that's a driver of that are the contributions. We receive the bulk of the contributions for the second calendar quarter of the year in July, but they are earned in June. So that's why there's that timing difference. Just quickly looking at the balance sheet, our total assets are over $604.6 million. The biggest piece of that continues to be the money that's in the short-term investment fund, over $568.2 million. We still do have $17 million in the impressed account at Aflac to pay benefits. I mentioned the bond funds were at $1.4 million. Our operating fund balance was $14.9 million. And as Harindra had indicated earlier, most of that will be transferred back to the contribution fund, as most of you probably remember from our budget discussions a few months ago. And that happened in July, and that number was an accumulation of money over the past few years due to us being better than budget. In July, our operating expenses were $1,062,000. Nothing unusual there. Our benefit payments came in at almost $37.3 million. That is a run rate of $9.3 million per week, an increase over the prior month. We have been having record-setting weeks in terms of the amount of money that we are reimbursing Aflac for benefits paid. Our most recent week was north of $9.8 million. So we will eventually be reaching the $10 million a week amount eventually. July, as I mentioned, is the month that most of the contributions come in for the second calendar quarter of the year. And so we received $118.8 million during the month of July. We'll have a more in-depth analysis of that next month and how it compares to prior quarters and things of that nature. And our investment income was $2.1 million. No projections this month because we're at fiscal year end. So nothing to project because we're already there. So that's where we are at the end of the fiscal year and preview of June. I'm happy to take any questions anybody has at this time.
Thanks so much, Dave. I know at the outset you mentioned that you're going to be revisiting credit card policies. And I know at state agencies and in the legislature this year, there was a lot of conversation about use of P cards. And I believe that the authority doesn't use P cards because you're not a state agency, but I'm curious if that conversation and the new policies that are contemplated to come out of the comptroller's office will inform the conversation at the authority, or if that's a sort of a totally separate conversation since you're quasi-public.
So I'll jump in and answer that one. So the credit card policies that were presented to finance will be presented to policy and personnel are very minor tweaks. And so we won't really be looking at the comptroller in connection with those. That being said, we watch what happens with the state very closely. We take a lot of guidance from state agencies and the comptroller's office. We read all the audit reports and try to make sure that if we haven't already addressed the issues raised, that we have a solution for it. So we are keeping an eye on those. And if we think that there are improvements that we can make to our policies or practices, you will be seeing those come in. But You won't be seeing them in what is presented at Policy and Personnel and then the board next month.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, Erin, would you please provide your CEO report?
Sure, I'll keep it brief because we are at past 10 o'clock, but we've had a lot of great discussion. We've been very busy over the summer. We never get easy summers, and that's fine. We always enjoy being busy. Been doing a whole lot of outreach, particularly around Public Act 25-174, making sure that public and non-public schools are aware of the legislative change, aware of what that means to them and their staff. So we've held several webinars for administrators of public schools, administrators of non-public schools, and employees of both. And we have several more scheduled. We've collaborated with DOL on a webinar for the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools. We're always happy to do education. So if any of you on the board are aware of organizations that need training, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Please do check out the information on our website where we list the upcoming webinars, and we've posted the previous webinars. So that effort continues. As we've discussed, we're working very closely with Spring on the 10-year projection, the sensitivity analysis. As Melissa had mentioned, Finance asked us to do an analysis of potential impacts if any of the state employee unions negotiated in. So we've engaged with OPM and DAS to try to gather data on state employee FMLA usage to try to inform that. So that is ongoing and a big effort. We have been working with MDRC on the denial question. I know that Jess mentioned that last month's board meeting, and John mentioned it today. MDRC is a not-for-profit research organization that did some analysis and some surveys for us, and we're continuing to work with them on trying to understand the obstacles that may prevent people from submitting the documentation that are necessary. And we expect to be bringing some of those insights back to the full board. So be on the lookout for that. We are working on finalizing our annual report, which is due to the legislature on September 1st, which is Labor Day weekend, so we'll get it out before then. Our theme this year is growth in a variety of ways, and so as that gets finalized, we will share that with the board and get that published, but it is an opportunity for us to look back at all the work we've been doing over the past year and share that with the public, as well as being an opportunity for publishing a lot of data. We receive lots of research inquiries, and we generally send folks to our annual report because the annual report always has a wealth of data. So one thing, working on the Family Expo. So we haven't talked about that lots, but please be aware that October we will be hosting a Family Expo, and we'll be talking about that in the coming months. And then finally, we appreciate everyone's attention and attendance at our board meetings. This is a very busy board, and we really appreciate when you come. Please, please, please make every effort to come in September. Not only will we be voting on the policy changes that are necessary because of Public Act 25-174, but we will also be voting on the contribution rate. So please make every effort to attend the September board meeting because those are two incredibly important votes and we need your attendance. So that's my super quick summary of lots of the things we're working on. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions for Erin today? Melissa.
Yes, hi, thank you. So you mentioned the vote on the contribution rate next month. I just want to confirm that vote is because my recollection is you have a policy that says you vote on that annually, or is it a consideration of a vote annually? I guess I'm just looking for clarification on the actual action of the vote.
So the statute requires the board of directors to set the contribution rate each year. The decision must be made by November 1st. We have received a lot of feedback from employers and payroll processors that they want the information sooner rather than later. And so we try to get that vote in every September, so that if there's any reason that we can't get the vote in September, we still have October to meet the statutory deadline. So the vote will be a vote to set the contribution rate, which is either reaffirming that it's still at 0.5%, which is the statutory cap, or something less than that. Those of you who have been on the board for a while will know that I have never felt that we've had enough money in the reserves to support lowering the contribution rate. I certainly do not think this year is a year to lower the contribution rate. So that's what I think, but we will be talking about that at the board meeting in September.
Okay, great. And I would also assume that there will be modeling of what a vote to lower would look like. Is that
Yes.
going to be presented?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
We-
great.
We will share that as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Any other questions for Aaron? All right, seeing none, do we have any old business? Any new business? All right, seeing none, that concludes our meeting this morning. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
A second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. It is 10:09 a.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.